Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Mawala.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon. Okay, Gerald is in. I guess we can get started. Dr. Mwetwa, can we get started?
Can Justin confirm if Ms. Fatuma is in as well, but we can get started. Justin, please confirm.
No, I don't see her, but I would suggest David checks whether they logged in as participants and they get upgraded. That is Fatuma and Kaori. Meanwhile, I'll check with Kaori on WhatsApp. But David should check whether they logged in as participants. Because they may have registered as participants, but I know they got the notification.
I've checked. I'm not seeing Fatuma.
Okay, I'll check from this end.
I've checked. I'm not seeing Fatuma.
Thank you, David.
Any progress, Justin? David?
Yes, I'm seeing Kaori Abe, so I think it's okay. Yes, I'm seeing Kaori in, so I don't know just to know whether it's okay.
It will be very important that we have Fatuma on when we get started.
يا يما زايد شوقي ليك باين علي قربت اجيك يا يما زايد شوقي ليك.
We want. What is behind the idea of the statement, the Africa we want, is that all of us, every single one of us, has a role in building the Africa we want.
What is the Africa that I want?
Wow, the Africa I want.
I want to have an Africa where there will be less hunger. There will be equal opportunity.
My Africa is one.
Mr. Moderator, I think we can start.
An Africa that it's able to create jobs for young people.
We can start. Fatuma has joined in, although you may see her appearing under a different name.
That's fine as long.
Yeah, on the screen, but she has joined in. Okay.
That's fine as long as she's in. I thought I saw the face. Let me take this opportunity first of all to welcome everybody to this very important event, a webinar on digital agriculture in Africa, looking at the opportunities and the constraints. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mick Mwala. I'm going to be your host. My bio profile, brief one, has been shared, so you can get to know who I am. But I'm from the University of Zambia. I'm a director of the Technology Development Center. So I will take you through today's program. just as a way of letting us know about the webinar. I think the webinar is set for about 2 hours in terms of our deliberations, but I welcome a total of 234 participants by the latest record that has been shared with me. And these represent 41 countries across the world, from the Americas to the Far East, the Philippines, the UK, and indeed Brazil. So it's really covering the whole world. There are 11 countries that are from outside Africa. So of the 41 countries participating, 11 participants are from outside the country. I mean, outside Africa. We shall be guided by our program, and I believe that the program was shared. Let me just briefly indicate that the program has 3 segments. The first segment will be setting the scene, where we shall receive some encouraging words from the forum as well as from FAO. Thereafter, we'll receive a keynote address from FAO, and this will be followed in the second segment with a panel discussion. The specific guidelines for each one of these segments, I think I will devour those as we go along. Suffice to say that the third and last segment will really be a wrap-up, where we will agree as to why we came, what we did, and therefore what we've learned and where we're going forward. So those are the 3 segments that the webinar will be composed of. And without taking a lot of your time, it's important that we make very good use of our time, given the excellent participation that we've seen. It's not for me to really welcome everybody as such. That is left to the forum. But again, my responsibility as a moderator is really to steer our board through this program towards why we started being together here. In other words, why did we come here? So we'll solicit for your cooperation and understanding as we make the turn going through the program. With that said, allow me to once again welcome everybody. Special welcome, I think, to the Forum Party and the FAO, who are the co-host of this event. With that, let me move on to the first segment of the webinar. And this really is to receive some encouraging words. And the first remarks will come from the forum. And at this point in time, allow me to invite Dr. Florence Nakaiwa, who is the Deputy Executive Secretary at the Forum, in charge of planning, resource mobilization, and management. As you can see, she is a well-vested person from her profile, with a 20 years experience in higher education sector in Africa. She's experienced in a number of aspects to do with institutional development in higher education. And I believe that this activity, therefore, this webinar, therefore, speaks directly to what she is well vested in. With that, let me invite Dr. Nakaiwa Florence to give us her welcome remarks. Florence.
Thank you very much, our moderator, Dr. Mickey Mwala, for those kind words and for introducing us to the webinar. Ms. Fatuma Said, Deputy Director, Partnerships and UN Collaboration Division, FAO representative at this webinar. Other FAO representatives present, Mr. Gerald Sylvester, Investment Officer, Digital Agriculture, FAO, who is our main speaker for today, panelists from the different RUFORUM member universities, the moderator, Professor Mick Mwala, colleagues, staff, students from the universities across the network and the globe are here, colleagues from the RUFORUM Secretariat, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Professor Adipala Ekwam, the Executive Secretary of RUFORUM and the RUFORUM Secretariat, the RUFORUM fraternity, I wish to welcome and thank you all for joining us for this webinar, Digital Agriculture in Africa, Opportunities and Constraints. The first in the series, in the 2022 series under the RUFORUM FAO partnership. We have purposed under this FAO RUFORUM partnership to explore topical issues that would be of interest, first and foremost, to the RUFORUM network, our stakeholders, and the general public. We do appreciate that competences, new ideas, and issues are emerging on a continuous basis. It is therefore important that we keep ourselves and the constituents abreast of what is happening at the national, continental, and at the global levels. You will appreciate that digital technologies in agriculture are pertinent to the current and future developments on how we view, undertake, appreciate, and benefit from agriculture, not only at the farm level, but across the value chain. To borrow from the European Union phrase, digital technology is important from farm to fork. The opportunities it presents, especially to the young people who are considered as digital citizens, and to the not so young, digital immigrants, is enormous. Yet, we also know that there are bottlenecks that will prevent us from realizing the full potential. That is why we at RUFORUM, in partnership with the FAO, found it appropriate to dedicate this afternoon to the topic, Digital Agriculture in Africa, Opportunities and Constraints. That the question that comes to mind is, where are we as a continent? Are we still on track, or have we been left behind? I am sure the team ably represented today, leading us in the discussion this afternoon, will throw some more light on what is happening. I want to thank Mr. Gerald Sylvester for accepting to take the lead. I further want to thank the panelists, Dr. Jackson Philly from the University of Zambia and Ms. Fiona Nyanzi from AidTech Consults, practitioners in their own right, for joining us. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Mick Mwala, Director of Agricultural Technology Development Center at the University of Zambia, our moderator, for being part of this exciting discussion. Allow me to thank the team at the RUFORUM Secretariat, led by Dr. Alice Mutiti Mwetwa and Mr. Emmanuel Okalan, for putting this webinar together. Let me also thank Mr. Justin Chisenga and Ms. Constanza Matia, our contact persons at the FAO, for connecting the dots and linking the RUFORUM network to the different directorates and subject specialists at the FAO. We also have in this webinar 2 alumnus of RUFORUM who are the rapporteurs, Ms. Pauline Arakit and Dr. Marius Afonre. We anticipate that under the 2022 FAO Forum Letter of Agreement, we have more webinars. While we have identified topics such as data architecture, operation and demonstration of FAO STAT, aqua crop, modeling climate change impacts on food systems and food systems research, we invite you, our participants today, to propose more areas of focus. We cherish this partnership with the FAO because it gives us an opportunity to tap into the vast resources at the FAO's disposal to increase knowledge, expertise, and network of opportunities for our engagement as Rio Forum. I thank you for listening to me, and I welcome you once again to this Digital Agriculture in Africa webinar and urge you for your full and active participation in the webinar. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Florence. I think the message is quite clear. Let me, in the interest of time, I think the points that you've raised, we'll bring them up and put them in perspective in context as we move on. But thank you very much once again. At this point in time, allow me to, if I just say colleagues, let me extend an invitation to Ms. Fatuma Saidi, who is the Deputy Director at FAO in the Partnership and UN Collaboration Division. Ms. Fatuma has been at FAO for a long time, but as you can see, starting with being country representatives and then ending up to be at the headquarters. Of interest is that she has had extensive working experience in the field of agriculture, food security, rural development, and natural resource management. What we are geared to listen to and discuss today is very much so an important aspect related to these areas that Madam Fatuma said has been working. So without much ado, let me invite once again Ms. Saidi to give us our remarks.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Mr. Mick Mwala. Dear Dr. Florence Nakawia Mayega, sorry, I hope I pronounced it well. Dear participant, good afternoon to all. I'm delighted to welcome you all today on today's webinar on digital agriculture in Africa, opportunities and constraints. I wish to thank RUFARO for collaborating with FAO on this event, the moderator, the presenter, and panelists for agreeing to the invitation to share their knowledge and experience with us, and you all participants for making time to join this webinar. Digital technologies have great potential to impact agriculture and food production in Africa. And if harnessed adequately, they will continue to contribute to the transformation to a more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food system for better production, better nutrition, better life, and environment, leaving no one behind on the continent. Academia and research institutions have an important role to play in harnessing digital technologies for agriculture in Africa. I'm therefore happy to note that this webinar targets university lecturers and graduate students in the continent. FAO recognizes the crucial role digital technology plays in increasing agricultural productivity, protecting crops from disease, tracking and mapping pests, connecting smallholders to markets, and optimizing the use of resources in the sector, among others. Furthermore, the use of digital technology in the agriculture and rural development sector can advance many of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the African Agenda of 2063. FAO is therefore committed to assisting its members to ensure that they benefit from the use of digital technology in agriculture and rural development sectors. FAO, the International Telecommunication Union, and other partners have developed the e-agriculture strategy guide to assist countries in developing their national e-agriculture strategies and master plan. National digital agriculture strategies and master plan will help the member countries rationalize resources, both financial and human, and holistically address ICT's opportunities and challenges for the agricultural sector in a more efficient manner. The hand-in-hand initiative is FAO evidence-based, country-led, and country-owned initiative to accelerate agricultural transformation and sustainable rural development to eradicate poverty and end hunger and all forms of malnutrition, which are SDG 1 and SDG 2, as you may be familiar with. In doing so, it contributes to attaining all the Sustainable Development Goals. The initiative prioritizes countries where national capacities and international support are the most limited and where operational challenges, including natural or man-made crises, are the greatest. FAO, together with a multitude of partners in government, private sector, and institutional innovators, resource and multilateral partners, farmers, fishers, and all those who help feed a hungry world, is working to upscale digitalization and making every village, township, rural community digitally connected, dynamic, and prosperous through our 1,000 Digital Villages initiative. I invite you all to visit the FAO website to learn about the various digital agriculture initiatives the organization is carrying out. You can also access several publications in our digital agriculture. Numerous challenges, however, still remain and exist, limiting the adoption of digital technologies in agriculture in Africa. Strategic partnerships are crucial to delivering the opportunities of digital technologies in agriculture. The government, private sector, farmers organization, and academia need to work together. Academia and research institutions in Africa have a key role in catalyzing research and reaping the positive impact of digital technologies, providing data and scientific evidence for the development of policies to transform the agriculture and rural development sectors. In this context, I am happy to note that FAO and REFORUM are collaborating and working on initiatives including training, carrying out studies, and holding consultation focusing on digital agriculture, targeting young farmers, family farmers, and the youth involved in developing digital solutions in agriculture in Africa. This event, targeting the academia, contribute to the goal of the FAO REFORUM, which is to increase the capacities of REFORUM members, university, to better contribute to the work of FAO. Graduate students' research projects in the main area of FAO's work, including digital agriculture, can help us understand the challenges smallholder farmers face in Africa and contribute to the development of appropriate and relevant solutions. The academia can also help document and share smallholder farmers' experience in using digital technologies and their impact, which will ultimately motivate other farmers to invest in digital technologies on their farm. To conclude, recognizing new approaches is necessary to meet new demand and support the development of new business models that provide more opportunities to smallholder farmers for growth. This webinar is a great opportunity for all of us to learn from each other, share the benefit and challenges of digital agriculture, and identify areas for potential research. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sadie, for spelling it out as clearly as possible that we need to embrace these digital technologies in agriculture, because we need to be efficient in this resource poor or resource limiting environment. We need to be inclusive because we can go further in terms of development when everybody is brought on board. We need to be resilient because there is a need for us to be able to stand the shocks that will come not only from the climatical situations, but some economic shocks as well. So that resilience is important. And by so doing, you clearly give us a good layout that it's with these kind of characteristics that we can sustain agri-food systems. I think the importance and the potential of digital technologies is very well understood from your remarks. And I want to, without having to attempt to summarize your nice, clear message to all of us, is to point out that there is a role for the academia. There is a role for the academia. And I hope all of us, as we move on in the webinar, we will identify what that role can be as we deal with the opportunities and the constraints. I like the fact that, you know, at nowhere do I find the term challenges, because sometimes people think challenges are, no, challenges should be turned into opportunities, and I think I like the way this has been put. So with those few remarks, without risking summarizing a very well laid out remarks to us, allow me to move to the second segment. Clearly, I think colleagues, and I'm sorry, I'll be using that term quite often, but I believe that we are contemporaries. Colleague, there is a need for us to embrace the digital agriculture in Africa concept. But we must know, as Florence put it, where are we in this digital? Where are we? Are we behind? Where exactly are we behind? Is it in everything? And there, what can we do to go forward? To allow us to do that, we move to the next segment where we have, with the help of with the help of FAO, we're going to receive a keynote presentation from Gerard. So Gerard, I think I want to give you an opportunity so that you can share with us, where are we in this digital agriculture in Africa? Where are we? I think your presentation is highly anticipated. I think Gerard, as we can see, has a lot of experience in this area. 14 years working in digital innovation. And I'm excited to note that actually he's been assisting countries in developing strategic framework with this in this particular area. He's an author of that very important document that we've been encouraged to access so that we know what it is all about, the e-agriculture strategy. I think with this kind of background, we are all ears, Gerard, to listen to your keynote.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwala, and thanks to RUFORM for this opportunity. If you would permit me, I would like to share my presentation so that I can make my... Please do let me know if you're able to see my presentation.
Yes, yeah, the only thing is you may, depending on the screens that otherwise you want to make a full screen so that we only see the screen.
Is it better now?
I can see you.
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, I can see you very well.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, again, thanks for this opportunity to RUFORM to talk about digitalization to transform agriculture in Africa. In the next few slides, I'll be happy to share some of our experiences and insights on how digitization can help countries overcome some of the challenges that they face in agriculture. So as we see, the role of agriculture, the role of digital technologies in agriculture is manifold. Right from helping bridge the gap between agriculture extension to the farmers community, to giving them knowledge on environmentally sustainable practices, giving early warning systems, and most importantly, giving them connectivity to markets. And then again, one of the most important requirements that we see emerging in the last decade is on food safety and food traceability. These all cannot be made possible without the help of digital technology. So digital technologies are available in most of these things that that cover agricultural value chains. And the next ones that we see is on having access to financial inclusion, insurance and risk, and in building capacities among rural communities, and then empowering them to improve their livelihoods and to improve their ecosystems and everything. So the role of digital technologies in agriculture is very promising, like we heard earlier. But then where are we? Like Dr. Mwala was saying, where are we? What is the challenges? What's happening? If you see in Africa, still 30% of the rural population cannot access the internet. And 18% of the rural population have no mobile network coverage. And if you see globally, still 2.9 billion people are offline. Of course, out of the 2.9, close to 1.8 come from the two most populous countries, which is India and China. But in Africa, still 768 million people are offline. And then we talk about the gender digital divide, how men and women access technology, or how men and women have access to these devices and the internet. You see where Africa is. 24% of the women versus 35% of men. Compare that with the numbers that you see in Europe. So there's a huge gap. Now this gap has to be bridged. Only then can you bring a community into a digital ecosystem. Once you bring them into the digital ecosystem, then you'll be able to bring a lot of digital services. It's not only for agriculture, you'll be able to bring it for health. It will be helpful for other activities as well. So bringing a community, bringing a country onto the digital ecosystem, giving them connectivity is key to addressing some of the challenges that we face. And you see some of the statistics when we compare from 2014 to now, 6 years down the lane, 7 years down the lane, there's been phenomenal progress. The first one you see is the coverage gap. In 2014, 50% of the population was not covered, which means that they did not have any network coverage at all. And you see in 6-7 years, that has been reduced to 19%, which is very, very impressive. So going forward, the connectivity gap, the coverage gap is being addressed very well. Mobile operators are extending the coverage, and more people are getting into the zones where they have access to mobile coverage, at least a 2G network. The next you see is the usage. The difference between the coverage gap and the usage is that in a usage gap, you stay in a place where you have network coverage, but then you don't access the network, you don't access the internet. So that was 37% in 2014, and it has increased to 53% because again, you're covering a more population, but then they are not online. So these are not only the main challenges. There are several other challenges that needs to be addressed if you want to bring digitization to agriculture. Now, when we talk about Africa, there's smallholders. So when we see about the adoption of digital technologies among smallholders, we find that the adoption is extremely low. And the reason is what I would call it as the 4 A's: availability, accessibility, adaptability, and applicability of information. Agricultural advisories that these smallholder farmers need, the right information at the right time through the right means, it's not available. Secondly, if it's available, it's not accessible. Either it is because it was too expensive to access, or you have to access it through a particular device, or in other ways. Next is adaptable. Is the examples, the advisories that's coming out, adaptable to my instance, to my context, my village, my locality? And finally is the applicability. I can get an advice saying that spray this particular fertilizer for 1 week, but then if that particular fertilizer is not available in the 10, 20, 30 kilometer radius around my village, then I'm not able to apply that advisory I get it. So these 4 things dissuade smallholder farmers from adopting digital technologies. And then we see this huge digital divide. People who have access to technology, people who have access to the internet, and the people who do not. And the most important is the gender digital divide. As we saw in the previous thing, the amount or the access of men to digital technologies and the internet is very different from what women have access to, even to devices, mobile phones. And then we say that women play a huge role in agriculture, a major role in agriculture. And then if you do not identify the right way to get the information across to the women folk, and only target mobile phones and the internet and all those, then we're leaving out a huge chunk of people who work in agriculture. And that's one of the biggest drawbacks. Next comes the human and behavioral factors. Agriculture is very human. You need to have a human face to the advisories that you give. So we should not try to replace human interventions with digital technologies, and it's not going to work, especially with smallholder farmers. We need to support existing human linkages that exist, and then try to bridge them and give them the right tools and technologies through digital to help them do their jobs better. The agriculture extension workers, the rural community workers, or we can call them as the rural knowledge workers. Give them the digital technologies to help do their work more efficiently. Do not try to replace them. And finally, or next is the age. We see that the average age of farmers is around 50, 57, 58, and it goes up to 60, 68 in some countries. Adopting newer ways of doing things is always a challenge, when especially digital. So we need to find ways in which we can provide that hand-holding to get these people into digital technologies. Focus on young farmers, create rural entrepreneurs who will provide the last mile connectivity, help with the mainstreaming of digital solutions, and work with people who are not that much adept at using digital technologies. And again, work with existing levels and linkages in the village. Do not try to replace them. The lead farmers influence most of what happens in the village and what technologies or what varieties of seeds they use, or what type of cultivation they use. So work with these lead farmers, show and tell. That works a lot. That works, helps adoption a lot. And capacity development at all levels. We are talking about digital technologies. We need to build human capital, right from people who are working in the field up to the people in the ministry and everyone in between, because these are new ways of doing things. Once you introduce new ways of doing things, there will be a process re-engineering. There will be a way in which you do things differently. For that, you need new capacities. So we need to focus on the capacities that is needed to mainstream and sustain digital technologies. And finally, ICT infrastructures, application services should be more affordable in terms of cost, in terms of access, in terms of ease of use. So as you saw from the title of my presentation, we said transformation, transforming. It's a big word. So when you're talking about transforming, you cannot take baby steps. You need to really take a leapfrogging. We have to leapfrog to be able to achieve the desired transformation, as we call it as. So if you're able to overcome all the challenges that I mentioned and put in place all these frameworks and all these ecosystems that are needed to mainstream people into digitization and bring people into the digital ecosystem, then what do we do? What next? The first and foremost is digitization. So we need to digitize the agricultural value chain actors and the transactions. This is a precondition to implementing any digital solutions. If I go to my bank today and ask for a loan, the bank manager sits on his computer and sees what transactions I've done for the past year, because most of my transactions are digital. So he knows, okay, I can trust this guy with $500 of loan or $1,000 of loan. But if none of my transactions are digital, then he would find it extremely difficult to understand what is my worth, or how much can he trust me with a loan. So that's the same problem with smallholder farmers. Most of their transactions are cash-based. And once you do that, it's extremely difficult to find out your value. What sorts of value are you transacting? So if you bring them into the digital realm, you're able to track all transactions, then you get a kind of an idea of what all is their value and what services can be given. Second, we need data. The age-old adage that says, data is the new oil, or data is the new whatever we can call it now. We need data to animate these systems, and getting good quality, trustworthy data is extremely difficult, especially from agricultural stakeholders, especially from the field. So you need to build a robust ecosystem where you're able to get data from the field, from the smallholder farmers who are able to proactively supply the data. And then you need to be able to reward them for providing the data. So data for services. So you provide me data, and in turn, I will give you weather information. I'll give you crop advisories. So if you're able to bring that ecosystem and get that going, then you'll have the necessary data to animate your system and then be able to build services. Now, when we talk about data, we should not forget the most important aspect of data governance. The kinds of frameworks and legislations that support data. Data privacy, data security, who you're going to share the data with. You're collecting data from 1 million farmers. Who are you going to share it with? How long are you going to keep the data? What are you going to use it for? Because data is a double-edged sword. It could be used for good, and it can also be used for bad. So we need to make sure that those policies, frameworks, and protections are put in place before we set out to collect the data. And like I said, you need to have an incentive framework for sharing data. No one wants to share the data. But if you see, I've shared, and most of us have shared almost all our data with Google. Our photos are there. Google has access to our emails. That's because he gives me an incentive. I can use his maps for free. I can use his storage for free. I can use the 10 other Google services that I use for free because I pay with my data. So we need to bring this kind of a paradigm for agricultural stakeholders, smallholder farmers. Finally, we need to make sure that we are able to reuse building blocks. What do I mean by building blocks? Registration data, farmers' data. All these are collected by a different ministry in the country. There. we need to make sure that we bring in this multi-sectoral approach to digitization for agriculture. You can't build information silos and expect to scale up or scale out. We need to make sure that we are able to access data from another services and also to be able to share data with other services. So bringing in this focus of multi-sectoral approach to agricultural digitization is very important. So finally, once you have all this data, then you need to be able to use these data, analyze them, and extract actionable intelligence. That's what we say data-driven policies, data-driven interventions. So to be able to do that, there is a huge amounts of capacity that's needed in terms of the people who are managing the data, the people who are looking at the data to be able to extract intelligence from that. And then once you're able to do that, then you can build a lot of these models that can provide a great amount of insights to where are your bottlenecks, where you can focus your interventions to, and how you can improve a lot of things that you want to improve in terms of agriculture in your country. So before the previous thing I said, data for services. I give my data in terms of you give me services. That's a kind of ecosystem you need to build to get data. Then how can you make value from data? Here is where you need to build what we call it as a data as a service ecosystem. There are a lot of people who needs access to these data. So you should build a model in which you're able to share this data with them. Of course, respecting all the privacy concern, you don't send out the names and all the details, but you're able to give these insights, share this data in a certain way that other people are able to build services around it. That's where you bring in this private sector. That's where you bring in innovators. You bring in entrepreneurs who can identify opportunities and build smart services to help build value from the data. Data governance, like I said, is key. This should not be an afterthought. This should be thought of before you even start collecting data. And finally, we need to build capacities to tap into non-traditional data sources. What do I mean by non-traditional data sources? Mobile movement pattern, mobile data. Like for example, in COVID, a lot of countries use this to proactively put lockdowns, proactively shut down cities to stop the spread of COVID. So they were using how mobile patterns are moving. So they knew that people who are working in the city are moving towards the village when things close down the city. So we need to make sure that we do a lot of trace and testing in this particular place and so on and so forth. So capacity to be able to tap into various data sources is key. This is a game changer. Digital financial services is a game changer for smallholder farmers. Now, the bigger question is, everyone has a preference for cash. Now, how can you move them into a digital financial services? What is the value creation? How can we bring in that kind of an incentive for people to move from cash to a digital financial system? I mean, Africa is not new to this. We've heard of M-Pesa and all the other services. eNaira is there now. So this central bank digital currencies and all these things are a way in which we move away from cash to a digital kind of transaction-based modality. So we need to create value for that. What is the incentive for people to do that? Capacity, again, for people to be participate in a digital financial thing is important, because as we know, you get a lot of these spam calls and people get calling and asking about your credit card numbers or ATM numbers. So these are new for certain people who are not used to these things. And we need to build their capacity to understand the sensitivities, the challenges, the security risk, so that they're able to participate in this without much of a difficulty. So once you're able to do that, then you'll be able to build innovative and very relevant financing models. The traditional financing models that banks have is not suited for smallholder farmers. So once you're able to bring in data and understand what a particular community needs, then you'll be able to tailor offerings to that particular community or that particular season. So that will open up a huge door, both from the banking sector, insurance sector, to help smallholder farmers. And this also help build a lot of these agri services, like I mentioned. We can build subsidies over this model. Insurance, logistics, mechanization, all this can be built once you're able to set up this kind of system. Addressing the challenges, like know your customers and anti-money laundering, all this is key. Finally, is on agricultural extension. This is a key. There is a huge gap, as we know, between experts and rural communities, rural communities working in agriculture. How can we bridge that gap through the use of digital technologies? Are we going to focus only on mobiles? And like we saw at the beginning of this presentation, the connectivity still remains a challenge. So what do we do? Women do not have access to mobiles. Women do not have access to internet. So what do we do? How do we get the information across? We need to target multiple mediums. Radio is still relevant in most of the countries in Africa, most of the countries in Asia, most of the countries in Pacific. Target radio. Target the way in which you can get one of those tuk-tuks, put a loudspeaker in that, and to be able to deliver agricultural advisories. The back end to delivering that advisories is still digital. You need to create the script, you need to create the message, you need to create a knowledge base from where you can extract that information. But the way you deliver it has to be localized. See what works in that particular community, and then identify that. Mobile is just one way in which we can get that information going. And here, like I said here, village knowledge center. This is a very famous concept. You have a center in between four or five villages, which could be used as a hub where people can come to get information and to clarify their doubts or to contact agriculture extension officers in the city. So we need to build and strengthen those alternative ways in which people can access information. And when we give advisories, the advisories has to be hyper localized. And this, again, from the digital perspective, is extremely challenging. For me to provide an extremely hyper localized, actionable advisories to a smallholder farmer who has less than 1 hectare is impossible. It's extremely difficult for me, and it will not break even. No, I will not be able to build a business model over it. So then what can we do? There are a couple of ways in which we can do it. One, like I said, create rural entrepreneurs. These are the people who will be able to customize and deliver the information in a way that can be useful for that smallholder farmer, the person who's having 1 hectare. Secondly, get farmers into cooperatives. When you bring farmers together, they have access to better bargaining power, better access to information, better access to markets. So these are some of the ways in which we can build and strengthen rural communities involved in agriculture. And like I said, build and strengthen existing linkages. Do not try to replace them with digital. Digital agriculture marketplace. This is another key concern. We talk about food loss and food waste. There's close to, we talk about one third of what we produce goes to waste and is lost. And in most of the developing countries, it's the food loss that we talk about. Food waste is mostly on developed countries. So infrastructure, storage, all these are a big challenge in developing countries. So like we say, if a mango is in the tree, it's just a mango, but only if you take it to the market, it transforms into cash, it transforms into money. So how can we get that mango to the market without it being damaged, without it turning bad? That's a big challenge. So we need to make sure that you are able to create these kinds of hyper-local supply chain. Create this new hyper-local supply chain. Get people together in terms of cooperatives, so that you'll be able to, access markets which are far away. You'll be able to hire a kind of a tractor or something to package it together, and then you can also focus on value addition on the field, in the field, so that packaging is done well. The way you transport the produce is much better, and things like that. And as we know, in one of the main challenges in e-commerce, not only in food commerce, but also in other types of e-commerce, is addressing the two most pain points, which is payments and logistics. So these has to be kept in mind, and the focus should be on sustainability. Who are the right partners to keep on board to make sure that whatever you're trying is sustainable and goes on to become mainstreaming and just not an experiment again. So what needs to be done? First, connectivity has to be increased, and you need to partner with mobile operators and other telecom operators to be able to increase connectivity. There's a very nice example where MTN in Uganda was unwilling to extend coverage to a particular community. And then through Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they gave a kind of a guaranteed loan. They said, okay, you extend coverage to these villages. If within 6 months you do not break even, you can cash out this the loan that we have given. And MTN extended coverage, and within 3 months they broke even. So they didn't even need to have cashed out that. They didn't even have to access that guarantee fund that Bill and Melinda Gates give. So once you give connectivity, lots of services can be built on top of it, and lots of business models can be built on it. So connectivity is very important. And when we talk about the soft infrastructure, we need to focus on frameworks and services. Like I said, the data governance is a major issue that we need to talk about. A regulatory framework. There is two types of things that we can talk about. We call it as soft touch regulation. When we talk about soft touch regulation is, for example, in most of the countries, when we're talking about digital payments or mobile payments, the easiest regulation is no. Because there's a lot of challenges. There could be anti-money laundering, there could be a lot of other things that's happening. So the default regulation is no, I will not allow mobile payments or digital payments in my country. That's the easiest regulation. But then again, that's very retroactive. That's very, doesn't help you move ahead in the digital ecosystem. So you need to have a sort of a soft touch regulation where you have a sandbox. You let players play around with a certain minimum level of regulations, see what works, what doesn't work, and where is the challenges, and then use that details, use that information to build much more stronger policies that can be implemented while not hindering all these startups, all these innovative services that come up. Interoperability is key. Like I said, you can't go about building data on the silos. You need to be able to build interoperability, both platform and data. So even if within the Ministry of Agriculture, and we see this in every country, each division has its own database, and they do not share data with other division under the same ministry. I think those days are gone. We need to now focus on how we can interoperate between these platforms, share data, so that we can start building value. Partnerships, I cannot stress the importance of partnerships. When we're talking about digital agriculture, it is not only the Ministry of Agriculture. It's a multi-sectoral, multi-sectoral kind of a partnership. You need to leverage intersectoral leverage partnerships. Only then you'll be able to go from piloting to mainstreaming and business as usual stage. So I think I've covered this in my previous slides. So thank you. I hope I didn't overrun my time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It was an important presentation. And again, I saw a lot of passion. No matter you've shared this with us, it's very important. And I'm sure everybody will agree that Gerard has unpacked a lot. We would have needed a 1 day, 2 day workshop to really devour on these things. But that said, I think you did whet our appetite to think out of the box on the various aspects that you've covered. I think it's quite comprehensive. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not attempt to summarize this very good presentation, but just to indicate that Gerard took us through a range of issues, starting with the challenges that, first of all, that nice picture of yours, I think summarized everything. And I would think that if every one of us when you pick that, we can take any of those segment and expand it. But the challenges that remain in Africa quite distinctive, with regard to a number of factors. You took us then through the issues of the related to the digitization. If you want to operate in the digital world, the issue of digitization is important, and you took us through all those important things. After digitizing, I think data is useless at least you can do some analysis, transform it in some information. That's the analytic aspects, I think, that you mentioned, and you have covered that quite adequately. Ladies and gentlemen, he also went further to point out the aspect that, in the digital technologies with regard to agriculture, the digital financial services are important. He highlighted a few things, the incentive. I like the example you gave of M-Pesa. I think a lot of us, especially I saw a number of colleagues from Kenya. I think maybe we shall get some insight. Okay, again, at the risk of trying to summarize a very good presentation, you have given us a lot that we need to discuss in the next 1 hour that we still have here. And I look forward to making reference to some of these very important aspects in our further discussion as we shape our way forward with regard to digital agriculture in Africa. What are the opportunities? What are the constraints? Yeah. Then once again, thank you very much, Gerard, for very well received. Ladies and gentlemen, it's only fair at this point in time that I open Gerard's presentation to some clarification. Yeah, and you can raise your hand if you on the raise of hand, then I can pick it up. But I have two questions that I've picked from the chat. One has to do with the issue of literacy. How I know this is going to be tackled through one of the panelists' commentaries, but I think you can maybe very quickly just say one or two things. You're talking of rural farmers. I think the issue of literacy in the is important. Now, there are two types of literacy. Is it digital literacy, or is it just because sometimes you may find that your digital literacy could be higher in those that have gone to school because they're afraid of. But I think maybe you can shed some light on that one. The other one was to do with the how you can handle the code of conduct, in the rural areas. This came from Sylvester. He alluded to the need of a code of conduct. I think, again, in your presentation, you touched on the governance issue, but maybe you can handle those two while I'm waiting for any other clarification from the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mwala. Yeah, literacy, like you said, there's different types of literacy. One is literacy in itself, are you able to read, write? The second is digital literacy, and then you can have financial literacy and, so on and so forth. So, I would go out on a limb here and say that if you're targeting rural communities, the solutions that you develop shouldn't be a burden to them. So in a sense, even if you're creating something on a mobile phone and the person lacks digital literacy, you need to make it in such a way that there are pictures and audio feedbacks and other things so that he's still be able to interact with the system and get the necessary information that he wants. We see a lot of people in rural community now taking up WhatsApp. They use WhatsApp and all this instant messaging easily. So once there is a need and we have an initial handholding, then people are able to kind of adapt and understand these things. So again, understand your audience, see if they can work with images, audio, video, and then we'll be able to do that. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful examples. One of the examples that comes to my mind is Digital Green, which we are all aware of. Then you have Kuza, which is working in many countries in Africa. They mainly deal with video. So through video, they're able to kind of address some of these extension gaps, give information on probably the cropping pattern or integrated pest management or something along those lines. So video is still a very, very, very powerful method to deliver advisories. And that's what I was saying, radio. People still sit around a radio and then listen to the agriculture programs. So customize your information to various delivery modes, not only mobiles. So if you have radio, then again, digital literacy could be is not hindrance. If you're having video, digital literacy is not a hindrance. So these are not preconditions to getting someone on board to access any sort of advisories on digital. No? So we need to focus on that. The second one, on the code of conduct, I'm really not clear on what the question is.
I can read it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that in the process of sharing and using agri-data, smallholders, especially in Uganda, work in isolation. How do we support them to include code of conduct for using and sharing data? The primary data, your owners don't receive equal benefits as a result of sharing data.
Yeah.
We need to distinguish. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. No. This is a very big challenge. This is a very big challenge. You know, every month when I try to talk to a lot of these innovators and startups in different countries, you know, to understand what they're up to, you know, what's the new thing that they've come up with. And every now and then I get to hear them saying that we have the data of 10,000 farmers in this particular country. And I said, okay, would you be able to share that 10,000 data with me? And they say, yes, I will share it with you. So you see, these basic security mechanisms have to be put in place. Because, for example, let's take the example of collecting data. If someone collects the data from 10,000 farmers, right? He has access to 10,000 farmers' data, and he knows from the data that 9,000 of them are going to go in for paddy cultivation in this coming season. And he knows that all of them would need this particular fertilizer on the 3rd week of transplanting. So what does he do? He sells this insight to the input dealer in that village. The input dealer hikes up the price of that particular fertilizer by 50% before the people start to come and ask for this fertilizer. And then when the people, 9,000 of them come and ask for that particular fertilizer on the 3rd week of transplanting, the price has gone up by 50%. So although the intention of collecting the data from smallholder farmers is good, that we want to help them, give them services, if it is not handled properly, it could become a bigger disincentive for smallholder farmers. Okay. So putting all this checks and balance is very key.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerard. I think, like I said, this is you've really unpacked a lot of aspects, and I look forward that we can maybe deal with some of the issues. I see a number of comments and the questions that are on the chat, but in the interest of time, and I'll make sure that if during the panel discussion, if any of the questions that has come on is not being addressed during our discussion, I will raise it so that it is addressed. I mean, there are questions related to the policy. I think that is definitely going to be handled in the panel discussion. And there's a question of agriculture not being very attractive. You know, it's difficult to sell agriculture when you're dealing with this is from Lucy, and the other one is from Jackson. But I believe these will be taken care of in the panel discussion. So please don't despair. We are taking note of the questions that are coming on the chat, and I will ensure that your questions are being responded to when we move into the next set. So with that, colleagues, allow me to close this question and answer session. We may have taken a little bit long, but I'm sure we may have answered also a lot more that we can touch some time in the next session. All right, so let's move to the next part of this segment. And here we're now going to have three panelists. We have three distinguished panelists. In the name of one, Dr. Jackson Piri. Dr. Jackson Piri is a lecturer at the University of Zambia, senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Science. He's a very active academician. I hope Fatuma is around, because this is the person who should now listen to. They have a role to play. Very active academician with 20 postgraduate students at different levels and 40 students at, he has graduated 40. So this is an important aspect. We would like to see how. Most important, I think, is that he has an interest in the applied artificial intelligence. So let's see how he handles his topic. And what we asked Dr. Piri to tackle relates to the question: what key aspects should countries in Africa region consider to improve building blocks, yes, such as digital literacy? This is the point that we've raised. We point out that bridging the gender digital gap, something that Gerard alluded to, cost of access to technology and services, and indeed the capacity of all actors. This relates to the question that was raised of the literacy aspect. This was his. So may I invite Dr. Piri to go through what he can share with us with regard to that topic. You have 12 minutes or so thereabout. If you can do that, I'll be very happy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. All protocol observed. And thank you, Gerard, for the presentation. As mentioned, I think it was well packed. So my talking points, as he indicated, were to look at the literacy levels in the area of digital aspects, and then issues to do with the bridging the gap on the from the gender point of view, and then issues to do with cost also for the technology. I wanted to start my presentation by looking at the starting point. If you go to the United Nations, the UNIDO, the component that looks at the industrial development, they've brought out one important aspect there when you just want to talk about issues to do with development, and it's the aspect of Industry 4.0. So every time we want to talk about technology and development, Industry 4.0 becomes the starting point for everything. And it's disruptive in nature, but also brings out quite a lot of things that will drive the future where we're going to. Issues of artificial intelligence, data science, IoT, and a few other components are all embedded into this, into Industry 4.0. I'll try to share the link for one of the documents that was produced by the same, so that you can go through to just acquaint yourself. It's part of the data that was shared by Gerard, but I will also share a link in the chat as we go on. Currently, the population is at April this year, we're at 7.9 billion people on the planet. 5.3 have some devices of some sort, either a mobile phone, a laptop that they use to connect to the internet. And statistics show us that actually 5 billion is at April 22nd, 5 billion of the population is connected on the internet. So they're in the digital space. So in terms of
Dr. Piri, do you have by chance a PowerPoint for what you're sharing with us?
Okay, I can while I'm talking, I just need to connect my laptop, then I can share maybe some slides so that we can follow through. Just a minute. Just give me a minute so that I can just connect the laptop so that we can move together.
Yes, please. That would be helpful so that also to be faster. Rapporteurs, Pauline and Marius, if you could go through the chat box and just make sure that any question that has been raised there, you pick it up and you can just direct it straight to me. That would be helpful. If you go in the chat box, there are some questions that have been raised. So it's just the name and the key issue. Now we can pick it from there. I want to indicate that right now the number of participants that we have on is 144. I mean, this is incredible. It shows, I think, the interest that 145 is increasing. What could be the reason why it's increasing? It's maybe it's 145 persons that are on the webinar. That's pretty exciting. Dr. Piri, you want a little more time?
Yes, Chair, just a minute.
Yeah, I think for the other panelists, if you've been PowerPoint, please get them ready. And then better still is if you could, since we are dealing with IT, just send them straight to Otto or David right away. And then when your turn comes, they can quickly project it. That's the quicker way of doing it. That's for Fiona. And Gerard, if you have any additional, yeah, you can do it the way you did it, Gerard, since you already connected. But Fiona, if you, yeah. Dr. Piri?
Chair, it seemed to be okay. I'm almost there. My network was seemingly taking relatively long to connect.
So we take note as one of the challenges. Speed.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. There were some interesting observation. I mean, I particularly wanted to make reference to Lucy saying that agriculture is difficult to sell. Let's discuss this aspect. Why would mobile phone sales providers find agriculture difficult to sell? I don't think we need to answer, but let's think about it. By trying to connect, perhaps you can just go back to the mode that you are using, and you can go back to the mode that you are using so that we can just finish maybe your part. Hopefully we can pick the salient points from your submission.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm set.
Okay. So yeah, please, if you can just, I'm sorry, but in the interest of time, so if you just can go through your, and pick the salient points that we would, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I was here just talking about the new era in which we are, talking about the Industry 4.0, and that actually from this source that you see that actually for going forward, we are into this new dispensation where there is this transformation that needs to take place in almost all aspects of our lives. Gerard did touch quite a lot of things, digital payments, the agri ecosystem, and a few other components. So all those, they come to play into the Industry 4.0. And going forward, I think that's the direction in which we are heading to. Then I was bringing some statistics in terms of the world population, that actually where we are today, we are at 7.3 billion and the 5.3 have some unique devices, and about 5 billion, which is just about 63% are using the internet. In terms of growth, the population is growing at 1%, about 80 million approximately. This is as at April 2022, while the internet is growing at about 1.7%. In terms of devices, those who are using the internet, about 96% are using some form of mobile devices. So these statistics form some form of a basis when you want to talk about the digital space and where we are heading to, Chair. And so in terms of my talking points, which I was given, the first part was to do with the digital literacy. How can we improve this one? Just from the experience from us as from the academic point of view, this is one big challenge in this area at most of the levels. Again, it's not that we don't have enough time. I would have gone back to some of those slides, some of those sites. You can just pick that site that I showed you, this one that is here. They have quite a lot of information in terms of where we are, usage, literacy levels, and a few other information that you can find there. But for this particular one, for us in Africa going forward, I think the ICT hubs will be very key and very important to help to bring this digital literacy levels up. For some countries like Zambia, where we are, I think ICT subject has been made mandatory at primary school level and secondary school level. So that's the beginning point for most of the population. Going forward, I think it will be also important to include what I would refer to as adult education. While the actual education is okay, but also this one specifically targeting the literacy side. There are so many of us who are very well educated. In terms of the actual education, we are okay. But in terms of usage of basic ICT infrastructure, that one, I think we don't benchmark it so well. And so this would be more helpful where we take our elderly people into this retraining process at all levels, rural aspect and also the urban area where this can be done. They can be offered through several platforms. And also Gerard did highlight some of them. Online classes, universities, I think, can offer these, and even schools, general schools where they have the structure on the ground, they can provide these. The other aspect that I was requested to talk to was the issue to do with the gap, especially in the area of gender. I think one of the key aspects, like experience from our own department where we come from, there is only about 10 to 15% of females who come to do typical mainstream computer science or ICT, so to say, largely because most ladies do not want to align themselves to STEM kind of subject areas. So this is where we need to encourage them and give a lot of incentives so that we can push these numbers up. Engineering and science, once we start pushing these up, then this will help us to start bridging up that gap. Also, the tools that are available. Again, my previous presenter did highlight quite a number of challenges that are related to the to our colleagues, the females, in terms of availability of the tools and just some incentives, so that we can also move at the same pace together as a family. Some of them, they are largely related to the social norms, which applies to the female. They go back to our culture, of course, and so that some of those they need to be addressed. Issues in terms of access to technology, quite a lot of challenges here. Because most of these are in the hands of the private sector, though the government do provide some of these. But what we've seen in some of the countries, like again, I'll just give an example to Zambia itself, is where you have promos. They've done so much in the area of education, where if you want to access some data bundles, they will largely apply on the education sector. But in the area of agriculture, I think we need to bring so many of those incentives also, which can help us to increase accessibility. The other challenge that I see in Africa, in terms of access to technology, is the issue of the geographical nature of our countries. If you look at most of Asia or Europe, the countries are relatively small, and so it's easy to deploy technology there. But ours, it's the distance and also the issue again that came up in terms of once you deploy the technology there, are you able to get back the return from that technology? So the countries are huge, the places are big, and then in terms of getting back your investment, it's very difficult. And this is where government needs to come in to put in the base stations and expand the accessibility. I've seen that actually in the recent, I think years, there have been a lot of talk by launching in more satellite based kind of technology, where you don't need to lay down fiber or the base station in order to have access to most of these ICT-based kind of services. So we are hoping that actually when that comes on board, it will be much cheaper and easy to access by most of the population. The fourth point that I want to talk about is related to the third one, issues to do with services. Here, I think most of us are lacking, but we seem to be catching up slowly. Development and the deployment of the local services. And there are a number of areas. One of them, I think that we talked about, Gerald did touch on it, it's the issue of supply chain. The other areas are issues to deal with, for example, early warning systems. Some of the problems that we find here are issues to do with, for example, for armyworm, which has been quite a challenge on most part of this side of the world. And so using artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things and the components and areas of data science, it's easy to build up tools that can be accessed by the local people or that can help us actually to address some of these challenges that relate to early warning systems or supply chain. We've been participating on some of these areas with our students. We have some few publications that we've done, but it just shows that actually most of these solutions are doable. Some of the works that we've been working on were sponsored by FAO, like the FAO using artificial intelligence. So we had some tools that we developed there. We are currently doing something on locust tracking or early warning system for the locust. Again, it's just playing around with the artificial intelligence tools and see how best we can address these. The final component is something to do with the value chain. I think this also was heavily highlighted by Gerard. So from the point where a farmer produces the food, do we have a courier system to take these products to the market? And then do we have that market readily available where the population can pick up these products? Currently, it's the multinational chain stores that are able to do this, but are we able to expand this platform so that we have more players who can play into this, but the food is well packaged, the products are well packaged and they reach the market fresh with that guarantee. They've been, for example, in Tanzania, I saw that actually they were deploying some kiosks that were acting as the final point of this value chain for the fruits, and a few other solutions that are being deployed. So to summarize this one, the presentation, I think I started by talking about the Industry 4.0 as the starting point. From 2016, 2017, I think the talk is that actually there is this movement where everything has to move and it's going towards the cyberspace, the payment into digital, self-driven cars, robotics, and a few other things, and also the component of agriculture there. And then the second part is the literacy levels, where I just talked about the issue of especially adult literacy, where you can access some of these little courses, or where governments and the universities and schools can deliberately upskill the population, start upskilling the population in order to help them to reach where we need just the bare minimum so that they can uptake, and using different types of medias. Currently, I think it's the social media platform that is more or less like trendy. The issues to do with gender, the biggest part that I talked about here is try and push our the girl child into STEM school so that they can pick it up from there, and then we start balancing out those playing level fields. And then the government here, in terms of input to help, especially in terms of deployment of the critical infrastructure, which still remains as a challenge, so that we can access most of these technologies. Chair, in the interest of time, I think I'll end here. I'll be available, I think, to pick up some comments and questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, we had a slight challenge at the beginning, so obviously we may have taken more time than we should have, but I note clearly that you address your aspect pretty succinctly, in the sense that for each of those areas, what we need to do is clear. I do not want to summarize that, but from your presentation, the issue of education incentive and government involvement seems to be key in whatever, if we have to improve these building blocks, government's involvement, the incentive framework, and the issue of education. You have taken the issue of literacy, not only digital, but you went further to indicate issues of adult literacy, which complements the digital literacy. I think I'm inclined to, in the interest of time, to invite the next presenter. We shall have a small Q&A at the end. There are one or two issues that I think would want to raise from Dr. Piri. We'll reserve that for that time. So Dr. Piri, you're not out of the hook. We'll get back to you. Let me, at this point in time, invite Fiona and see if we can have some little bit of interaction during that, because we lost a bit of time when we. So in the interest of time, I think we'll see how we can put this together going forward, especially in the Q&A at the end. Okay, please, colleagues, I'm really excited as I see the chat box as well as the Q&A boxes coming out very good question. I will raise that during the Q&A issues. Okay, Fiona is coming from the foot soldiers, in the sense that she is in the industry. She's in the industry. She's been involved in a number of research projects focusing on integrating ICT in agriculture. I hope you answer that question of why is it not attractive? There was that question. Please, she has worked both at national and international organizations, which is good, gives us a good flair. Fiona, with that, your profile is pretty straightforward. Most important that you are coming from the full soldier. You are out there practicing these things. So please, let's share the topic that we asked Fiona to share with us is of the role of public sector, private sector, and farmer organization in promoting and embracing digital technologies. Also bring on board what intersectorial leverages will benefit the adoption. So the element of the role of banks, insurance, the operators, and others. Fiona, it's all yours. And if you've got a presentation, you can share with us.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to you all, protocol observed. First and foremost, thank you. I would like to appreciate the Reform team and the Forward team for organizing this webinar. As the Chair indicated, my name is Fiona Nyanzi. I work with 8A Consults, and I'm a business manager, but a passionate researcher, mainly in the areas of ICT, integration into agriculture, because I believe technology is an enabler for us to deliver the different services. Allow me share my screen over a few talking points regarding the matter that I'm to discuss today. Okay, the first question is, what is the role of public sector, private sector, and farm organizations in promoting and embracing digital technologies? Well, since this is really cut out in 3 sides, I decided to approach it independently. So we shall start with the public sector. When you look at the public sector, of course, we look at organizations and government entities, and we shall say the first thing, setting an enabling environment.
Can you make it slightly larger, Fiona? Just enlarge it. It's really... Yes, yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So when we talk of setting an enabling environment, we look at the fact that we are talking of digitizing agriculture in Africa, but is the environment we are living in giving us that capability of digitizing agriculture? Look at areas where most people in rural areas do not have access to electricity, access to internet, there's low broadband. I appreciate Dr. Gerard, who highlighted some of the challenges that we are facing in terms of infrastructure. So if the government first works on setting an environment that is suitable for us to work with digital technologies as we implement them in the agricultural industry, I think that would help us work within the digital platforms and the agriculture sector. Then if you, the next point is ensure there is access to affordable digital devices. Currently, if we look at case in point of Uganda, by 2022, we only had 29.1% of individuals that have access to digital devices. But this 29%, you find that only almost like 13 to 14% are farmers, which means if the government works hand in hand with other sectors, like for example, the telecommunication industry and others, to ensure provision of these digital devices, this can enable the farmers as well to have access to these digital platforms through the use of the digital devices. Then there's an issue of ensuring internet connectivity for all. This is something that comes in as cuts across inclusivity, where we bring in rural, urban areas, and the women, the men, the persons with disabilities from all the different categories. So if the government and the different entities, ministries, and bodies work together to ensure that, yes, if the internet is available, is it available to all irrespective of maybe the location? Because if you look at Africa right now, our current internet connectivity is at 19%, which is way lower than the 30% of the global connectivity. And as well, there's promote innovations for agriculture. So government as the spear leader of the different countries and the ministries, I think, let me refer to the public sector. Public sector as the spear leading entity of all the activities would do a great role in promoting innovations for agriculture. This can be promoting innovations through maybe funding the different innovations for agriculture, funding the different initiatives from using the different structures of ministries. For example, in Uganda, MAIF funds different initiatives for agriculture. So it is a good initiative. Then there's also UCC that is currently funding the ICT for Farmers project. So if they fund the innovations for agriculture, it helps the implementers of these particular innovations to easily reach out because the funds are there, which means they are promoting the use of digital technologies among these farmers. And then digitize essential services. As Dr. Gerard was presenting, he looked at an issue of digitization. If take a scenario in some of these things we do, and they wake up and they tell you to maybe access voting services. You have to go online for you to vote for a particular person. This means if I'm a citizen of a country, I'm really patriotic. I want a certain person to be a leader. I'll take the effort to learn how to use the voting system such that I can cast my vote. So we can look at digitizing services, agricultural services, so that it gives an incentive for farmers to use digital platforms. This can easily be an initiative that governments and public sector can work on bringing on board. Then the next point is promote service innovations through different initiatives. I think this, I tried to cover it up in promote innovations for agriculture. So if you look at using many examples from Uganda, you can't blame me, I'm from Uganda for now, I'll use those since it's easy to reference from what exactly I know on ground. So currently, MAIF is funding different initiatives like the e-voucher. Then there's AgriShare, there's Easy Agric, there's I talked of the ICT for farmers, there's the National Seed Tracking and Tracing System, that is also part of my IF initiative. So promoting these service innovations enables the people implementing the innovations to reach out to the different farmers so that they can embed digitization in agriculture. Next point is improve service accessibility for both rural and urban. Currently, 40% of Africa has access to electricity. That is, so you ask yourself, where is the other 60%? So if you compare to the global access, it's at 87%, which means if we are to access certain services and especially the digital technologies we are looking at, we are cut out, because without electricity, I can't use my mobile phone. Most especially in the rural areas. People do not have electricity, people do not have internet services. So if we can improve accessibility of these services, it would also be an added factor to the digitization process. Then promote fair competition and arbitration mechanism. So when you look at let me take an example, the big two telecom players we have in the country. We have MTN and Airtel. So MTN and Airtel, you use MTN and Airtel because they are the brand here. But what if we say we are introducing other farmer organizations to come on board so that the industry has many players that people can copy from, people can use as relevant examples, people can, people that can bring on board different innovations, not only the very few that are there and the only ones we are using as benchmarking, as the people to spearhead that aspect of digitization. Then attract foreign direct investment. So if we look at countries that are succeeding in digitization, for example, I think I'll look at Ghana or Kenya. The internet penetration rate of Ghana is 85% recently. But that also comes in, for you to easily invest in a particular item in a country, at least there has to be an indicator. So if the public sector works hand in hand with our other organizations to improve our digital mechanisms and digitizing the different processes in agriculture, it will easily attract other funders from the different countries to also invest in the agriculture sector, since it's easy for someone to monitor their activities. For example, we have a system that enables the ICT for Farmers has a component that enables a farmer to monitor activities, like garden activities, without being physically present in the garden. So if a person knows that my investment is worthwhile, this can attract more investment, direct investment in agriculture from different countries. Then I looked at fair competition. Let me try to be a bit fast. Promote innovations and human capital development. As a public sector spearheading this role, there is a lot of need for promoting innovations and human capital development. We can do this through digital skilling. And somebody raised a question of how are we going to do this digitization of agriculture, yet majority of the farmers are illiterate. Well, there is more need to carry out digital literacy for these farmers, but this digital literacy should be customized to, I'll say, the farmers' need. If we notice that the people we are going to work with are really illiterate, we can use aspects of the animations that is translated in the different local languages. We can use more of infographic content to train these people on how to use the different digital platforms. So digital skilling is a big initiative that the public sector can take up to improve the use of these digital initiatives. development of policies that foster the use of digital technologies. Normally, policies put up and they're not used, but it's better off than not having any policies. So, as the public sector, we can focus on the development of the different policies that foster use of these digital technologies. It can also be an added advantage to digitization of agriculture. When we move to the private sector, so the private sector, first I'll look at, as EdTech, I think we fall under the private sector. So, and other organizations that are really focusing on digitizing the agricultural process. So the first thing I'll look at is developing and deploying digital services as digital service associated innovations. And when we work on that development and deploying these services, because you notice a farmer will not know that these digital platforms exist or the use of these digital technologies if they are not developed and taken to them to introduce them to them to use them. So that is an initiative that the private sector can engage in. Then participate in advocacy of digital technologies. Then we have to promote innovations uptake. This has also been something that has been discussed by the previous members. I think innovations uptake is something that farmers tend to not take as a serious aspect. But how can we easily promote innovations uptake? Maybe we can provide incentives to these different innovations that the use of this, what are the benefits of a farmer using the particular platforms? How is the use of digital platforms going to improve maybe productivity of a farmer's activities, a farmer's yields, a farmer's day-to-day activities in the garden or in the farm? Then our training in the use of the different digital platforms. Like I said earlier, farmers can only get awareness of these products if they are taken to them. So if we carry out more training in the use of these digital platforms, it can easily enable the farmers to pick up the use of these different digital technologies and improve their perception towards technology. And if we look at the different farmer organizations, sorry about this, the next slide, I tried to look at the different systems and the different systems that we have currently. I was talking about the ICT for Farmers that has a web portal, a mobile application, an integrated web, SMS engine, and content. And this agricultural content that is on the e-Academy enables a farmer to easily learn how to use or how to integrate the different aspects of farming into their processes. So this content that has been developed in this system is translated in different local languages that can easily be understood by a farmer. It's content that is designed in animations. So it's easy for a farmer who is actually illiterate to understand that, okay, if I see a handhold, this is how I do mulching using the different pictures. So skilling and development of these platforms is a key role for the private sector. And the other slides I'll just run through. They're just talking about, they're just giving images of, sorry about that, of the different systems. That's a mobile application. Then we have the National Seed Tracking and Tracing System, and that is a picture of the images. Then we have Viazi and Viazi mobile application. Of course, I really first looked at systems that we have here in Uganda. We have Narrowgroundnut, we have the Jaguza. You notice that these farmers are taken and trained, but on the use of these platforms by the private sector. By the time when you train a farmer on the benefits of using these digital platforms, they tend to lose that bias in how technology is not being a hard thing to use or how technology is not going to benefit them. Then the third category I had to look at are the farmer organizations. What is the role of farm organizations in fostering the use of digital technologies? First and foremost is mobilization and empowerment. Mobilization and empowerment of these farmers. In most countries, farmers are registered under other farmer groups. And these farmer groups are the best people that we can use to mobilize other farmers to use these particular digital platforms. So if we take up like a farmer association, train these people as TOTs, use these TOTs we've trained to train other farmers.
Fiona, I don't intend to really interrupt you, but as per our contract, perhaps you could be a little bit more quick so that we can catch up, because we still have one more panelist and then we have a discussion. So yeah, since we're going to share this, I think you can easily just highlight the key ones and then move on. Yes, please. Sorry, I hope I didn't. Yes, please.
The next is create awareness for the various digital platforms and technologies, definitely through the trainings that can be carried out, then through partnerships with the different ministries, organizations, so that they can reach out to these other farmer groups to introduce the use of digital platforms and technologies. Advocacy for the use of ICT innovations. To enable the use of digital technologies, creating knowledge platforms for these systems, we need to ensure farmers have a good deed to why they are using these platforms. For example, in one of these projects, we can say if a system is designed to help farmers in training, we can say the government can make that maybe system be accessed without having to pay data bundles or something of that sort. Then farmer organizations are also involved in advisory and training in the digital platforms. We've already looked at that. What intersectoral leverages is the next question. What intersectoral leverages will benefit adoption? I think I'll address this by simply maybe saying we all depend on each other to survive. So if the different sectors can currently, I think it was last year in Uganda, the budget for agriculture was something like 799 billion. And people had a lot, but we forget that if the money that is allocated to, for instance, construction of roads in rural areas, this construction of roads is going to benefit agriculture, in which way we use the same roads to maybe transport commodities to the market. Then if this construction is done in a particular area, in a rural area, what the best thing is, as we construct the road, we provide internet, we provide so that these different sectors, agriculture is benefiting, there's a road being put in place, then there's internet being put in place, which means me as a farmer, I'll be able to benefit from these two sectors through that. Then in terms of capacity building, we can use the aspect of capacity building as well. Government always carries out trainings, a lot of ministries, I think a lot of ministries carry out trainings concerning different civil trainings and all that. But if we could incorporate the training of the civil trainings we incorporate the aspect of digital literacy into these trainings, which means if the aspect of digital literacy is incorporated in the trainings, a farmer benefits in two ways. I will learn the ways of carrying out and the different aspects that a particular ministry has come to train about, but I'm also learning digital literacy. which means by the time I am using digital technologies, it is easier for me to integrate the two. Then there was an issue of sharing of data within the different sectors. Governments are always doing registrations. Registration, for example, UBOS has a registration that is carried out. And there's this registration that they do in Uganda of the national IDs. You provide detailed information about some of the activities you do. It would have been of an advantage if that data that is being used for, of course, not the confidential data, these other details, the activity the person does, the sector they are involved in, and all that. This data can also be used to implement the use of these platforms so that we know we can track a particular farmer in this way using these digital platforms. So on the sectoral leverages, we all benefit from each other if in that same aspect. I just noted two things: cross-sector collaborations, capacity building, among others. Then question 3 was to consider the roles of banks, insurance, mobile money operators, and others. These are really basic. The mobile operators need to ensure availability, reliability, and internet connectivity to farming services. We talked about this earlier in both the public and the private, in the public. Then they also need to ensure privacy and safety of farmer data and transactions, because by the time I use mobile money, I know my information is secure. So you find that systems that are developed, digital platforms in agriculture are being integrated. For example, if you look at Jaguza, it's integrated and it also has an aspect of mobile money. AgriShare has an aspect of mobile money and others. So they need to ensure privacy and safety of this farmer data. Ensure provision of affordable services, e.g. data bundles, we looked at this. Ensure inclusivity in the provision of their services. For example, currently, there are countries that are already using even the 5G. But in Uganda, in rural areas, we even don't have access to the 4G. So this has to be something that the mobile operators could look into to improve inclusivity for these services in terms of connectivity and others. Then ensure service access, the needs of the diverse people. Ensure that the services provided are targeted to the different groups of people. When it comes to banks and insurance companies, I have 3 points. Make financial services available to farmer communities, thus to support the sector to create new services. Then insurance companies can also develop innovative products to farmers to promote digitization. For example, if a farmer is using a particular digital platform and they can be able to provide you the information of their farmer has all the records required, they've been performing like this, they can get a certain incentive to when they're accessing maybe funds and the different services. So there's also providing easy access to funds. This also comes in the areas of the different circles that provide us access to funds. And the access to funds has also been integrated in the digital platforms, actually. The digital platforms currently that enable farmers to access insurance and loans, which can facilitate them in the different activities in the farming activities. I think that's all from me. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for listening. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Undoubtedly, you had a lot to share with us. Like it was planned, this was supposed to evolve in a manner that all of us would appreciate. your points. There are some questions that have been raised, but I'm also mindful of the time and what we had, the contract, the social contract we entered with everybody that around this time. So I'm gonna, Fiona and Ms. Dr. You'll excuse me. My intention was to engage you on one or two questions, but we shall deal with that after Gerard has a minute or so to share with us with regard to the topic that way. So thank you, Fiona. Thank you very much. Undoubtedly, there's a lot of details, and you went systematically to furnish us with what we wanted to dig deeper on. So I think as we shall be sharing this with everybody, we shall find this very valuable going forward. Okay, thank you very much, Fiona. Thanks. Okay, so Fiona, can you stop sharing? Thank you very much. So I think we'll move to the next presenter, and Gerard signed a contract, a side contract that is going to be giving us a synopsis of what he sees as key issues on the topic that was given. We have already been introduced to Gerard when he gave us a keynote speaker, so I don't think we'll need him to be introduced again. But I think of importance that Gerard, we wanted you to just share with us what you see policies, how policies will help improve the adoption of the digital technologies.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it was a very rich presentation from both my esteemed panelists, and as you saw, there was a lot of overlap. So, which means we are not saying different things; we are saying the same thing. So, which was good. Now, just I'll take a minute. One thing that governments have to do is to invest in agriculture human capital. There are a lot of challenges with climate change and all these things that are coming up. So basic capacity in agriculture has to be strengthened, with or without digital. That's a different story. So investing in agriculture human capital is most important focus. Second is investing in rural infrastructure, roads, cold storage, connectivity, electricity, like Fiona was mentioning. All these are very important. And only then you can top up on other things such as digital and other things to accelerate achieving some of your priorities, overcoming your challenges. Then strengthen partnership. Intersectoral leverages, as we all said, is key. Create rural entrepreneurs, strengthen rural infrastructure and create rural entrepreneurs. Bring in the youth. They will help you onboard digital services. And they'll be able to create this business model in the villages to be able to either provide services such as transport, logistics, and other things. So capacitate them. Invest in building this rural, incubators. The innovations has to start from the rural milieu. You can't parachute in innovations from somewhere else into and hope that it will work in a particular village or in a particular district. So create incubators in the rural village, encourage youth to take up innovations and create the supporting mechanisms to support and strengthen that. Finally, strengthen rural organization. Farmers organization, cooperatives, bring them back, strengthen them, give them the necessary support, because a smallholder farmer by himself is very vulnerable. There's strength in numbers. So once you're able to bring them into a cooperative, bring them into a collective, then you'll be able to target a lot of services, give them a lot of help, and they will be able to access better markets, better financial resources, and many other services. And finally, keep an eye on having to overcome most of these divides that we mentioned about. The UN has one phrase which says leaving no one behind. So like in Fiona's presentation, she was mentioning women, youth, and different sectors of the society, people who have access to technology, people who do not have access to technology, smallholder farmers, farmers who are working on leased lands, big farmers, leave no one behind. So these kinds of focus will help mainstream digital solutions, will help strengthen agriculture, and then we can see about transforming the agriculture sector to become something of great value to the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard, for saving us time. I guess the points that you were making, sharing with us, relate to the kind of policies that we should be brought on board or formulated for the purpose that you indicated. I mean, investment as an issue, investment as an issue, the issue of inclusiveness. So I think in the presentation that preceded, we also noted that issue of policy was as important. And let me allow. So Gerard, thank you very much for. Let me allow some 2 or 3 interventions from the audience. A number of people are asking for the presentation. I think the organizers are going to take care of that. But our important thing for us is to maybe let me ask Fiona. Fiona, you indicated, I mean, in terms of the farmers, you outlined quite in detail the farm organization, how they can help you to improve the adoption, so that help improve or promote and embracing the digital technologies. But as we all know, most of these activities or the digital technology services are provided by the private sector. How do you, and the private sector, you are in there for money, I mean, it's a profit-oriented or driven undertaking. How do you balance, your interest between making money and delivering the services? Fiona?
Thank you, Dr. Mick.
Just take a minute or minute just to respond to that. How do you balance the interest? I mean, the private is in there for money, and at the same time they're supposed to give. So you're trying to service basically resource poor or resource limited farmers. How is that? How do we compromise that? How do we balance that?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. The private sector is in it for the money, but it all comes back to how are we bringing this? Which incentive are we providing for these farmers to get on board with the digital platforms? So if we say we are going to put up a certain incentive for example, the different TOTs to train their other farmers in the use of digital technologies, I believe we can both achieve what we both want from this. Because if we provide an incentive to a particular individual, they also see the need to pass on that skill. So we can use the different farmer organizations, select people that we can use as the TOTs to offer the different training, of course, with a certain incentive. And these incentives can not only just come in money, but there are different, for example, there's an initiative.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you are breaking. I think maybe this is an issue of network again. Can everybody hear me?
Sorry about that. My network got a slight error.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah.
So I was saying.
Go ahead. Just wrap it up so that we can see if someone else has a different view or in addition to what you are saying.
Okay, so I was saying we can use more of providing incentives to these people such that they can also work within the digitization agenda to the different farmer groups and farmers. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Piri, just related to what Fiona said in the issue, do you see a role for a specific role, strategic role that the government can play, because there is an issue of cost here. You touched on issues of the cost of. Can you just highlight the role that government may play to bridge the gap between affordability and the access, actually? Dr. Piri. Dr. Piri, are you around? If not, Gerard.
Yes, Chair, I am. I am, Chair.
Please go ahead. Just very briefly, minute. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the infrastructure and the cost, the biggest part, I think as indicated, to deploy the ICT infrastructure is not cheap. It's extremely expensive. So one of the workable solutions that most government have seen is to go into what I would refer to as a private public partnership, where they start deploying, for example, what you might refer to as the network infrastructure, 3 or 4G network infrastructure, and then they go on some form of arrangement on how they can scoop back part of their profit, or government can get it on, deploy these into strategic areas, and then start charging a commission on the ICT companies who can then start offloading part of their infrastructure on these, especially the base stations. Because currently, I think for us to reach, especially the rural community, the only possible cheaper technology for now is GSM, and it requires you to deploy those towers and possibly fiber, which is not cheap. So this one requires that kind of an arrangement, Chair. I hope I got the question right. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to know if there's any role that government can play. I think you've touched on that. There's generally, and you should know, Gerard, in your presentation, you did present this. It's to do with security. I mean, cyber security is an issue. You know, I'm sure we've heard over where people are suing certain houses, tech houses, because of the use of their information for whatever. Similarly, how do we handle this cyber threat that can?
Yes, Chair. I mean, this is going to be a constant discussion going forward. You know, how do we bring in data protection? How do you make sure that the data that is collected is indeed used for the purpose that they say they're going to use it, and it's not going to be used for any other purpose or even misused? So this is, again, there's no one solution to the whole thing. You know, it's a combination of proactive policies, frameworks, as well as legislations.
Dr. Piri, can you mute?
So please, you know, we need to have a combination that will help. You know, even in Europe here, we have this GDPR that was launched. So what happens is, now whenever we access a website here, you get a pop-up saying that this website is going to collect all these data from you. Is it okay with you or not? And then what do? We don't have time to read through this whole list of clauses and things that are put up. We just say accept all, and then we go ahead. So, you know, you can put in all the regulations, but then there is always a loophole in which that can be exploited, and that we see, like you said, a lot of tech houses and other things. So this is a constant discussion. There's absolutely no one size fits all or one solutions to overcome that. But it's something that we need to keep addressing as and when we kind of see things cropping up. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody from the audience who would want to say one or two interventions? I know most of the interventions have been addressed. You know, I tried to ask some of the questions I was asking. Actually, the questions that were coming from the floor, as I was picking them from the chat box. There was one on language. I think that one perhaps has been handled. I think I heard from the presentation of Fiona, or if it's not Dr. Piri, alluding to use of different languages. I think I heard something like that. But I hope that the person who asked that question, at least they got the response. I now need to, because I'm mindful of the time, and also I'm seeing the number of participants seriously reducing. I don't know whether they're getting bored or they just have to move to other engagements. At this point in time, I think our intention really was to have had a kind of free flow of discussion, but I think we all will agree that from the three panelists that we have, given the kind of topics or areas that we wanted them to share with us, they were a little wider, but I think they have made extremely good input into our understanding of where we are with regard to digital technology in agriculture. We have not been very specific in agriculture. Fiona, I think you brought us back home through your presentation to relate to some examples within agriculture. But by and large, I think we definitely have received very rich input to addressing the digital agriculture in Africa. The opportunities are pretty straightforward, have been stated in a presentation. At this point in time, I wanted to open this for Q&A, but I think, as I said, I asked some of the questions on behalf of the participant through those which were in. So by and large, from where I sit, we definitely did address that aspect of interaction. We could not make it as open within the 2 hours to allow everybody to have a question and answer, and also allowing the presenters in the adequate time to explain those aspects, which have done extremely well. Colleagues, let me first address the forum and colleagues that we now move to the segment 3, which is the wrap-up and the way forward and closing. I will just make some 2-3 statements with regard to wrap-up. The way forward and closing, I think I'll leave that to forum to handle. In a way of wrapping up, I think we started our webinar clearly underscoring the importance of digital technologies in agriculture, clearly, and the benefits therefore which can accrue by embracing the digital technologies very clearly. And I think Fatuma's presentation outlined that very clearly. Then we came and looked at what is our situation, where are we? And I think taking Gerard's presentation and a bit of what Dr. Piri presented, we have a good feel of where we are. There are gaps. There is room for us to improve. There are certain priorities. Now, we can have a long list of what needs to be done, but I think these need to be prioritized in terms of which should come first. So the identification of the driver point, which one? Is it infrastructure, the driver? Is it education, the driver? Yeah. Which one is the driver? In terms of the key players too, is it government? Is it private sector? Or everybody involved? I think those are questions that we have to address going forward. So yes, digital technology is very important. It has a great potential. Yes, we need to move into this new world, and I think Dr. Piri, you talked of Industrial 0.4. I think when you elaborate on that one, it's quite interesting because this is where people are talking about artificial intelligence. This while people are talking about artificial intelligence, we are talking of percentages of 30%, 40% of people being digital literate. So I think there is room for us to move in that. In summary, with your permission, I see 3 key aspects being important. One, I see that government, either through incentive, policies, or otherwise, has a bigger role to play. The participation of private sector will depend on how government treats them, creates an enabling environment. And I think, Fiona, your first point under public sector in terms of their role, I think that's the enabling environment. The enabling environment could be economic policies and other such things. So I think government has a role. The second one is that there's got to be identifiable incentives. Yes, the identifiable incentives. Now, these do not have to be government oriented, but rather, as Gerard said, you used, what was the term? You used the term, let me just speak, it has to do with you use the term for service, digital for service. Also. In other words, you need to, if you want to get data from me, you can get data, but there has got to be some, incentive for me to give you data. So there's got to be some incentives across the board for the private sector to be involved and thirdly, what the point that I saw cutting across all the presentation, I think it is related to the issue of education. I mean, there is no two-way about it. That I think education, the literacy. So all aspects related to the digital literacy and just a fundamental literacy. There is a need for us to have strategic intervention in that regard. My last statement I'd like to make is we may not have dealt with the issue of the cost of digitalization. Is it cheap? Who will fund it? Is it cheap to digitalize? I don't know, but I don't think we dealt with that. But these are issues that we may look into as we as we go forward. So with those comments, the Reforum team, that is Alice and Otto and David and the rest, I think from my part, I see that we got a full dose of what we asked for, a little bit more than we asked for from the keynote speaker. First of all, from the presentation of Florence and Fatuma as to the context within which we should consider this. And I think Gerard gave us where we are by and large. And I think then the panelists gave us indications of what we should do going forward, looking at who the players can be. With that statement, allow me to now ask the forum from my side. I think in terms of my statement, my wrap up, this is all I want to say. And I want to thank the forum. I also would like to thank FAO. Specifically thank Gerard for the good presentation, for the keynote speech or remarks, comments, very good references. And finally, my three panelists who have done a fantastic job in giving us very detailed treatise of what we wanted, what we need to do going forward. I thank you. So I think I'll be on, but I would like to be guided by either Alice Mwetwa or David.
Thank you, Chair. Florence will give the closing remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wow, this has been something. I know that we have eaten a lot into your time, but I do want to thank each and every one of you who are still on. We had several people on, and we thank you very much, Gerald. Thank you very much, Mick. Thank you very much, Jackson. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, FAO, for organizing this, because we have already eaten into that time. At RUFORUM, we are proud that this has been a successful webinar, and we know that digital technologies are quite important. The struggle continues, the discussion continues, and the dialogue continues. I know that we have learned a lot that will take forward in our research, in our teaching, and in how we deal with the stakeholders and farmers. Thank you very much. See you in the next webinar. Thank you.